Hello, everybody, and welcome to our season 3, episode 3. I remembered today, folk, of
Yeah.
Line of Duty.
And the reason why Charlotte's not on camera tonight, folks, is because she's still getting used to the way things are in her job, because she's been moved to a new set of um, and continues a the school from what she's told me and from what she's told me. So it's a bit sort of challenging, isn't it, Charlotte? It's
Yeah.
taking
I'm a bit
yeah.
tired this week, folk.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit tired. So
Uh,
I probably, if you saw me, it would not be a pretty sight. So
mhm,
I was like, no camera today.
mhm.
But hello
Uh,
to Sudoku. Who else? Quickly, we've got Jim and
yeah,
Wendy. So welcome, everybody.
and yeah, and so for you the you are in the chat already, which is brilliant to see. So to start us off, shall what earlier general thoughts of this episode before we get into the nitty of
Yeah, I think the sort of two core bits of this episode, which was delving more into Danny's background, which you sort of got teases and little hints last episode about, was handled brilliantly.
yeah.
I can remember it being handled well, the topic matter and the way it was written, but watching it again, it really did impress me because, as we'll get into it, that topic is not easy, and I think this show dealt with it very sensitively and knew what it was doing with it. And then, sort of, the other big part of the episode was Dot, the sort of progression of his character and how you are now fully seeing the manipulator, the sort of the skills and how he operates. And I think the actor, and which is, I feel bad for not remembering the actor's name, but he's also brilliant. And you sort of see the bits, the sort of a bit of the psychotic nature of Dot coming through in this episode, which is always really
Um,
intriguing to watch.
with them, and some Craig Parkinson.
Yes, he's brilliant
Mm-hmm.
because the little turns he does in this episode.
He's kind of a Jekyll and Hyde, though, because at times you think he can be quite sort of charming and he kind of lures people in, but like that's just a mask, so it's a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde type scenario of his character
Yeah,
in this.
you can very much see in this one
Mm-hmm.
that the cheeky chappy, the sort of kind, the sort of nice fella, is a very
Mm-hmm.
well created mask.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of you've seen gradually in this series so far the link to Tommy being brought up, sort of this panic getting worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's sort of interesting because we usually just have the main sort of bent copper do this, but we're seeing it with Dot, who we've seen for now 2 series previously, and sort of the Danny situation unraveling.
Yeah, see, to be honest with you, Dosha, I don't think there is kind of a main offer in so that they're gonna, because at first you think it's Aldrin, but obviously he gets killed off, killed right early on after the first episode, and then second, he's get into so second film is we get into the episode we kind of catch Jack and Harry, but I think the context in this episode, so there's not really any perceived or any, any like bad or put apart from Orton, who is basically becoming the like bad to the whole show at this point.
Yeah, and of course you've got Denton. She's not as much in this episode, but you sort of see the end of her trial and the sort of and obviously her sort of her attitude to Steve, which does get brought up in this episode again. So that's an interesting. So yeah, this is why series 3, the first episode's really shaky compared to what series 1 and 2 can do. But I almost think that was inevitable because they've got so many moving parts this series that you sort of have to maybe have that opening be a little bit weaker just because you know you've got these bigger plots that are going to start to kick off afterwards. Denton, not Benton, PD.
Yes, yes, he was always on in the chat and speaking. When speaking in the pranks, I could use not give it this for if he's
Oh, he will. He'll come in halfway through with like a quarter of a comment.
So anyway, this art is all and so this started off. You see, uh, me and Harry have a sort of um, have a sort of eating in us and can this is a sort of um this is a sort of I use sort of each by and by these because it's a say and surely a pill like sort of pill these and of course if he pill um and and of course if he pill implement as of observing and the situation.
Yeah, you can obviously this is the continuing sort of obviously sorry, we had Roderick's death last episode, so that sort of scared them all, especially Jackie. I think you see a lot more of Jackie actually this episode and sort of her mental state. And you can see she's now really starting to worry. And Harry's sort of still got that air of he's the one in control now. And Jackie's sort of just this panicking mess, which is just sort of I think she's starting to click that she's over her head. That's the feeling I get from this first sort of scene and meeting. She's sort of asking a lot of questions, and Harry's the one who's just sort of saying, "Oh, just they have to move on from this. They can't keep thinking about it." And he's just trying to like calm her down a lot.
And and I mean, I mean, and Jackie, especially wasn't striking me as the most agent casting and some but we'll get to but we'll get to that later on later on the review. So essential and so essentially so essentially Harry's kind of actor or an on so he's basically backing up his version of events. Even though she's kind of starting to get a bit of in a sense, and you can see that Harry's sort of the puppet puppet in regards to that relationship. Um,
Yeah, he's like I said,
the
he's the
one
one
was
who's sort of calm and collected, isn't he, right now? And Jackie's sort of thinking of, I think she's starting to click the consequences of what she's done, which is obviously later on that gets a lot more revealed.
mhm. Um, it's, so so you would go for on the on to the episode now. Can we see on look at the Jones or getting um Jones or getting the rest the and and the rest of the kids at the us and therefore us at home again. And so he's kind of determined, and then as the episode and as the episode to try and get some answers to what happened. That's answer the basic in to and to try and find out what I am I am all getting this one after them off east.
Yeah, you sort of, there's a few very bitty scenes, isn't there? And it's sort of, you can see
Yeah.
Steve isn't letting go of that angle. He's sort of, you can tell he's doing that thing when he's got a gut instinct about something, and he's sort of being his usual stubborn self, and he's like, no, there's something to this. But he then at the moment they're still sort of concentrating on Harry, aren't they? Because Hastings says to him, "I want you to physically show yourself at Harry's station." I think would be the term. And he talks to the captain, doesn't he? The woman captain.
Oh yeah, I found whatever long name is.
And that's when he finds out that he finds out that Harry didn't want to get transferred.
Yeah, but you don't actually you see that sort of conversation take place because it's sort of cuts to so it sort of cuts to Harry and that conversation takes place and he gets a text message um from Orton saying um we all that okay.
Yeah, like don't alert anybody to yourself. Sort of be normal. So that's when Steve finds out, and then this, like we said, Harry for the last couple of episodes has been quite. There's Matthew. He's sort of been quite calm, and this is now when he's starting to show his nerves because of what he does after this of Steve appearing, and that was the whole purpose of Steve appearing, to sort of almost make Harry make a mistake, get him spooked, to do something a bit stupid.
mean, so it ends up Harry was to Harry was uh, Harry goes to if Harry goes to the phone to make a hobby. The presumable, um, presumably to, presumably to Horton.
Well, he doesn't know, and that's also what sort of gets revealed at the end. It's just this number, isn't it, that he's being contacted by.
Mhm.
So he rings that number, and it doesn't go through, does it? It's the caller's not available sort of message.
Yeah. So and then wow, and 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 then so and phones up for like the reception and this or whoever it was to like kind of get an identification and then of the Harry was I
Yeah, I think it's like telecoms, isn't it? It's sort of their unit in the police that monitor calls and tries to track, but
yeah.
it's sort of a dead number. But it's the fact that he's done it, which is stupid. And like Wendy sort of says, it's a very like you've just been told to be calm, and what do you do? It's incredibly stupid, and it's one of the few times you've seen him do a stupid move, really. Because then obviously this gets back to AC, and this gets back to Dot because he's there. And this is what I mean. This is why it was important at the end of series 2. He became part of the team.
Yeah, and he becomes cool. I say cool. Cool. A shady character, particularly in as a episode, because everything in Oz is kind of droopy. Yes, and this hearing, you feel like you want to get in at this get
Oh,
in.
get used to that
Oh,
feeling. Get used to that
yeah.
feeling watching this program of you going, no, just no, I know more than you. Just do this, and it's like no. So Dot then obviously gets wind of this, and in a very disguised, even though I think it doesn't fully disguise his voice, but it's a disguised voice.
Yeah, it's kind of a southeast on sort of accent, so he kind of disguises his voice. And to be fair, um, and to be fair, a guy with him, oh, in the accent, it's actually a pretty, it's actually a oh, attempt at that accent.
Well, if folks don't know, Martin's a Scot. Martin Compston's as Scottish as they come, like Daniel, and he can do Steve's voice, which always amazes me when I see Martin in interviews.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the actor's name you said? Yeah, Craig's not the only one, but he's very good at it. And so basically, Dot says, "You're an idiot," doesn't he, to him? You've got way too much attention.
Oh, here we go, mate. Have a comment already. So,
it was a bit Danny Dyer. That's not bad. Shout, Matthew. It was a little bit, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, well, now you know the stream stuff. Because I've using the so the stream must have stopped.
Yeah, for our regulars, we know we've started. But then you've got another interesting scene with Dot next with Kate, and it's sort of because obviously he's taking over the liaison job with Kate, and he sort of you can see he's back to being a bit calmer. He thinks he's sorted the issue, And then Kate comes out with something, and you can see his face is like, oh God.
Yeah. And yeah, because she um um because and because she asks him a bit about the osmo a bit about the osmo and then it kind of puts him on the back foot a bit, so he has to still he has to be sort of this so Amy sort of kid you in again and get up icons and get up icon site by being out.
Well, it's not. It's flirting. It's not being pally. He blatantly is like, "Oh, do you want to come round mine?" It's not very subtle. And Kate sort of is sort of. It's like, yeah, I've not had anything to eat yet, and it's you can see what he's trying to do, especially once you get into that scene and what they talk about.
But to be fair though, but to be fair though, yeah, chill. He's kind of hard to resist.
Yeah, no, but like I said, it's blatant flirting, and I think she's quite. I sort of said this last week. I think she sort of is starting to fall on it for Dot.
Yeah, and then and it's about that whole sequence of events and you see and you see a newspaper before between the and the front of the paper. It's kind of this irksome in a sense.
Oh yeah, because we can see he knows Denton's a link to Tommy, and he's desperate to get any link to Tommy sort of to disappear right now because of that list, which does get brought up. But this is when it's an interesting scene for Kate, considering what we were saying with the whole cheating angle last series. It's sort of she does talk a bit about the impact of being undercover with her husband and the sort of how it affected their relationship.
Yeah, but yeah, but you can kind of see that Orton's sort of using that he's on and each other.
Oh yeah, like because he sort of he gets Kate to open up a bit, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, it's a good scene because I think it's almost feels like they're trying to add a bit more on to why she cheated a bit. Maybe this is just my reading of it, but it was good to have that little bit of more personal insight to Kate. And then obviously in response, like you said, and he's sort of clicking, she's opening up a bit. So Dot talks a bit about his ex and the gambling thing that comes up again, which we learned series 1 that he'd had an issue with it in his past.
And he well, you know, a cash in the whole season. He's,
Yeah, so he sort of says that's why my marriage sort of died. But like you said, you can see he's sort of he's seen this angle now, this weakness in Kate almost that he can exploit. Sort of, oh, she's had a or her marriage has been badly affected by work. I'll talk about my relationships and how they've been affected badly. So he's trying to, like you said, he's trying to cozy up. He's trying to find something that he can almost hook her in with. And now we get the photo brought up to do with Anna and Danny's background.
and so and so he and so he and so he comes today and so he comes today. You know, it should be it should be questioning the other boys that and also had similar experiences and goes to try and track on and he goes to try and track one of them down.
Yeah, but I think to be fair, at this point, they don't quite know, do they? They just know something went wrong at this place, that set Danny off.
Mhm.
And also the little added thing of the records have disappeared of Sam's
Yeah,
view, which when you
and
first watch, you go, that's a bit suspicious.
yeah, but it all comes back to but it all comes back to Orton because he was um because he's presumably responsible for all of that.
I don't know about the cotton for that stuff because I get the like I said, and we'll get into it in probably now. But I get the impression that was more a bigger sort of group were responsible to what happened at that place because you sort of when you get into a bit of the people that visited and later on when Steve goes back to this man who was a lad at the point, you sort of get the more vibe of this isn't just one group of criminals. This is a sort of spread out towards a lot of authority figures sort of involved.
Mhm.
So, like I said, at this point, they just sort of know something happened here. It's connected to Danny, and obviously the brothers were worked there. That's the other link that they know both the suspect from the first episode that got shot by Danny and then the man who got tortured and killed both worked there. So there's a lot of red flags. Yeah, I'm going to get to that because I was trying to gauge in my head a bit, Matthew, when we get to it a bit more, what
Yeah.
was current events at the time when this would have gone out. So he
Mhm.
meets Joe,
And
who starts to talk.
mhm. And Joe is obviously one, and then the other boys is you sounds you sounds huge. Oh, getting home sorry and so on. It shows them shows them the each of it he's been shown in the past of all episodes and so like and yeah identified the two and the two in this picture or in um of rooms of the home.
Yeah, and Joe, as soon as he sees them, doesn't he? He
Mm-hmm.
identifies the Murphys, and he sort of
And
gets a little. He says that the oldest brother was a caretaker,
mm-hmm.
and then the nephew, I think he wasn't a brother, was he? I think it was his nephew. Was like a coach, like who came in. He wasn't permanently there. He was sort of like
Yeah,
visiting.
right. And because and because what's because what's of voluntary watch that he was that he was directly involved in the whole and the whole big sitting at home. It is um, um, it is it is African that even the East
Yeah,
Station.
well, this is going to say now and this is
Mm-hmm.
why I think this is such a brilliant way they've done this storyline is there's just small little details, little sentences that you sort of the audience then start to put together, which is he says, oh, because he's a caretaker, so he would have the keys to all the rooms, and he says he had keys to the dormitories, and he lists a few others, and I couldn't quite jot them down in time, but it would be all areas where if somebody of a certain type had access to, they could take advantage. Let's put it that way. And like I said, and in the chat, yes, the actor who's Joe, you might recognise him, some people, because he was Robin Hood. He was that's the actor.
I never knew that. He's a good that.
Yeah, he's Jonas Armstrong, I think he's called, and he's very convincing in the scenes he has here.
Yeah, I have to check out the Robin Hood one of these.
Oh, it's really good, except from the last series. That seems to be a trend with BBC, like fantasy shows. It's like they're really good at the beginning, and then they just go to pot near the end. And you can see how like this is hard for him to talk about. Like this is not an easy topic. So Jonas, sorry, is really acting well here, because you can feel that he wants to talk, but there's a lot of like pain and sort of built up feelings from a lot of years.
And he tells but and he goes into detail about and he goes into details about as it he basically called to them as it also, and he goes up into detail them, and then one of them is very high up in the local and
Oh yeah, but before you get to that, and I tried to jot down what I could, like as much detail. It talks about they were known as visitors, that they were never given names, the lads. They were just
they were all given
Mr. Smith. The lads were told, and this is what I mean. It's sort of not once does in the scene any of the two characters come out and say very point blank what we all know this is. And I think it's brilliantly written that there's just little bits of, like I said, bits of information just building up this picture, and once you realise the full extent, you're horrified, because also they got told you have to do whatever these visitors tell you to, and then he talks about how they would take them to rooms, and then he doesn't really say anything else, but he doesn't need to at this point. You've clicked what he's referring to, and also the fact that they would take them outside of the home. He said they went to hotels. I think this is the only bit they get really close to saying what it is. He does use the term "we were farmed out," which stood out to me when I was watching it again today.
I mean, because if from that part of the conversation onwards, it gets kind of a bit difficult to actually actually sit and watch, because it was kind of it was kind of and it was kind of a bit sort of close to that sort of one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you can tell they're treading very carefully. But like I said, and I think this is, if you ever want to handle these sort of issues in a program, it's this is how you do it. That you're respectful, that you give enough that your audience who whether there's been a scandal at the current time or there's been past scandals in real life can connect the dots. And this is what the scene is doing. It's not telling you out, it's expecting you to think a bit and to sort of listen and sort of take in all that's happening.
You can, and so was into you will about another so called as it wasn't scared. Ibsen, but it wasn't actual of an name, its own name, and chats with, and I can't remember the woman's name.
Oh, Benito, PC Benita or something like that. I'm terrible as well. But yeah, all that all Joe can tell him isn't he. So doesn't he? Is that he was incredibly fat and he had bad BO. And like that's another bit where he says like I can't get that smell out of my head. And that's what I mean by just the acting and the lines here. It sends a shiver when you hear that down your spine because you think, God, like you can imagine almost as a teenager what I suppose you can never fully imagine it, but it's enough that you just start to think, God, like that's what's stuck in his head. And then another line which I think is that's had got me when I was watching it again was when he says to Steve, "Oh, Danny's finally got people to listen to us." And it sort of that caught my breath almost because you think, God, like he's done this by killing somebody, but he's almost had to do this. Is the sort of I think is the sense you get with that line of the relief you can hear in Joe's voice when he's like, "We're finally getting attention," and Danny's done that.
Yeah, so Mom finds out who they meant to. Yeah, the guy that Joe had described wasn't it with the council watching who was on the who was on this sort of as to the scheme. So yeah, but however, as a puddle of Bill, he's had a massive sort of shit walk, so he's unfit to stand trial because he's not because he can't really understand anything that's been said.
Oh yeah, and another you'll get fed up with me here saying this, like you've probably got so far. Martin in that scene when he's confronting him, you can hear the disgust, and he's literally like he says it once sort of loud, doesn't he? And then he gets really close to his face, and this is like nasty almost Steve coming through, like he snarls, he's beside himself almost with anger at what this man has done and the fact that he now can't answer for it. And you sort of do get that sense of the injustice here. That this man is probably never going to answer for his crimes because of his medical health.
But you also find out that Joanna us had already making points to the officers that it was just to the police. Sorry, but it was just sort of it was just sort of more than a scab. It, in a sense, it wasn't really upon so as well, you kind of see the corruption with the police again.
Yeah, and the High Lord thought, yeah, and this is what I meant to, because obviously Steve's been, I think he's seen Dale, and he's sort of saying to Joe, "Can you come into the station and see if you can
Yeah,
identify any more faces for us?" Because I think he knows he needs to find a person who can actually talk, who can actually
yeah,
actually they can charge for this, and you can, and like I said, Jonas acts this brilliantly as well. He comments the police didn't come, like, and that the boys felt abandoned, and like if they did talk to police, which is an interesting line. Don't know if you caught it. They learned not to. So it's not just that they were
yeah.
ignored, the boys. There's a hint there that going to the police could have caused more problems for them.
And yeah, and yeah, and eventually we kind of um over um Heston or actual meaning.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. You get that sense of that larger net now, don't you? Of it's not just a few police or coppers, as sort of Joe says, who ignored them. It's sort of this almost systemic at this point, just silence of this place, and however people seem to know what was going on, but they weren't willing to do anything about it. And Steve sort of, and you can see Steve is getting more and more emotional as well, and he's getting very
Yeah,
connected now, and he promises him, doesn't he? I'll
yeah,
get them. And you sort of see this is the few times you've seen Steve get this emotional to do with a case. You've seen him angry, you've seen him sort of cocky, you've seen him be a lot of things, but I think this is one of the first times you see him getting this connected almost.
yeah, because I mean, because the point like you home after watch me, or if this going as it kill is or um or
But you could see he was,
not
like I said, and this is, and I think that also is a really good way to deal with this topic. That you see, like the real life, whenever any of these things, scandals happen in real life, it does make that anger come out in people and that sort of disgust, like I said,
yeah,
and you need a character, one of your main characters, to sort of show that, I think, to give this topic area any sort of respect
yeah,
and not just treat it as sort of like a shock fact. That's what I mean. It's like you feel like they didn't do this for a shock to deal with this topic. They did
yeah,
it because they had something to say about it and they really wanted to show sort of how it affects the victims. And I think that's why Joe is sort of written the way he is and acted so well, because they really wanted to show the victims here.
yeah, and yeah, I find out that Joe's get his own, Joe's get his own for ammo, and so he's tried to on his own, like around to get the way he can, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and he sort of says like, "I love you," doesn't he, to her? And you can see that's a
And
very tender moment of
yeah,
him sort of being incredibly thankful that he's come out of this. Well, he's not
mhm,
come out of it. That's probably the wrong term, but that there's been something positive in his life afterwards.
yeah,
And now we leave that thread for a bit, don't we?
mhm,
And we go back to the sort of Jackie and Kate, and sort of Jackie unraveling and becoming this sort of nervous wreck, which we got showed at the beginning.
and yeah, Jackie goes eats and the Jackie goes eats flower, and she asks him, "What have you been saying?" And so what have you been saying to is he and and he said Kate said I've only been telling I've only been telling the truth about Harry and about how you were happy to go along with it. And then
Yeah, Kate's sort of doing her job because she's not been as sort of prevalent, has she, so far in the series? She's kind
of been a background character.
Yeah, she sort of has, hasn't she? Because, like I said, Dot's sort of become more into his own. You've got Steve now with this sort of his case as he sees it, and Kate is sort of doing her undercover work, and she is sort of trying to get them all nervous. And I think this is when you see her actually start to show a bit of her skill, because she knows exactly what to say to Jackie to sort of get her back up, doesn't she?
And she kind of respects Jack. He's also been being complicit in the all to the unregistered ones.
Yeah, because that's sort of her smoking gun, isn't it? She sort of says to her, "Oh, Harry made a phone call. AC know that." This sort of at this phone box, and you can sort of see sort of the look of Jackie when that's said, to be like, "What is he doing?" And I think this is when she starts to realise being on his side is more dangerous now, and it's worth just being truthful. And that's sort of what Kate makes her realise.
And so then next scene Jackie goes Jackie goes Harry's and sort of and sort of for once Harry because obviously he's still moment has just happened in regards to Harry.
Yeah, and like now she's the weak link, and she sort of, like you said, she has that moment of, I can keep lying, I can keep protecting him, and he's just going to get me more trouble and more sort of hard. Not trouble. It's like I said, the light bulb's now clicked, hasn't it? I think like it's fully Harry's not worth covering for anymore, so she's going to go to AC-12.
So she dials up she yells up the she yells up the narration
Yeah, and then but the next, like in that sort of, like I said, this episode is a bit choppy, but I think it does it well because we're now to Denton's trial, sort of the concluding bits of her trial.
So and again I know that acting in friend that Paris as well was actually pretty damn good.
But it's not much of the other barrister. It's as people, I don't know who's pointed it out, Martha's mum. It's the actress from Doctor Who was Martha's mum. She's sort of cross-examining Denton now, isn't she? And like trying to find sort of holes in Denton's new claims of Steve's sort of so-called relationship that he had with her.
And she kind of eventually goes a bit sort of angry, and a bit sort of angry. You can't tell she ripped and apart her whole version of the events.
Oh yeah, she's just it's almost like a machine gun, isn't it? Of just This doesn't make
Yeah,
sense. This doesn't, and
yeah.
because like I said, I tried to, like I said, I had fun taking notes for this episode, folks. If you saw me, it was like manic writing at points because she's asking about the guards, obviously, who would have been at her door guarding her property, and she's sort of very quick to go, well, where's your bedroom? Where are the guards? Surely they would have heard any sort of relations. And like you can see
Yeah.
Denton is like trying to think of a way out of this and she can't. And then she also, yeah, she's basically saying the front door's close enough. She even gets the plans out, doesn't she, for the house and says, no, it's 2 point something.
And yes,
She's very loyal in it, like,
2.5.
yeah, 2.5, very precise. And like,
Yeah.
there's a brilliant little line when Denton says, well, I suppose that's true. And she goes, no, I have the property plans. That is exactly the distance. So there's a fun little put down. And then she asks about, did you ever see Steve with this money to plant, basically? And she's like, well, no, but he could have. She's sort of fully corrupt. She's fully painting Steve as a corrupt copper at this point, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she's sort of saying, well, who she was. You can see it in this scene.
Oh, Jesus, Marsh.
Oh, come on, that's tame. That's tame for our Matthew. He made a comment about Tesco bag last week, and that was worse.
Oh, yeah.
So, and then sort of, like I said, there's sort of 3 main attacks, isn't it? And then the last one is, which I think is the ultimate sort of put down and the sort of way to sort of make her credibility go, Denton's, is to say, were you always honest with AC-12?
And so she kind of makes up a bullshit answer saying it's a very there's a very sort of it's there's a very sort of it's yes, and she says it and she says it a couple of times, and she's been questioned and can and the barrister I said, have um have you tried to um to myself and to myself the jury and the rest the rest of the what throughout this yes and as another a couple of questions
Well, at this point, she just has a full-on like laying in session, just saying you're manipulative, you lie, you sort of use you, and it's basically what we've all said about Denton. She pretty much pegs her, doesn't she? She has a very good sort of overall sort of character profile almost of Denton, and she gives it in court, and it's very accurate. And then so that's that bit, and then we go back to Jackie now. So this is sort of the big interview with Jackie, where she comes clean about a lot of things.
So so I should point out that this is actually always in train, and this is actually about always in train of you, and I think it kind of easy to be sort of naive with Jackie that she was and she thought that she was gonna get more in sort of punishment basically.
Well, even I found it was interesting watching it again. Ted's demeanor is very different in this interview. If you compare him to previous interviews he's done on suspects.
He's not as harsh though.
No, he's a bit softer, isn't he? And I think but to play into what you were saying, I think he's doing that on purpose to sort of make her think she's gonna have a lesser punishment, and right until the point when he's got all the information he needs out of her. Because it's that sort of thing of, oh, he's all, like I said, he's a lot softer. He's not shouting. He's not bawling at her, and he's just sort of letting her come out with all the information. And it's not until right at the end he sort of gives her that wake-up call, as Wendy's talked about in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
So this is...
Oh, hi. The comment with me. Okay. So she gives details into all Jennings and about how she retracts the previous statement of the skill or trying to the only because that's a story that Harry kind of pieced and also she be she base so she basically says that are attract the pretty areas and even like even and also you yes struggle for the eye and
Yeah, she talks about Danny. She now says he point blank shot the suspect. So, and she sort of says, here's what actually happened, and it matches what we saw, so we now know she's being truthful. But basically, they all copied Harry's account because he was the only one in the room with Danny. And basically, Harry, like you said, just said, here's the account, let's just all copy it.
Yeah.
And it was sort of, and his logic was, and he said to them, if we do that, we're going to get at best manslaughter.
Yeah. But yeah, but and she says or Jerry with him and wouldn't think he could have killed him. I wouldn't think he could have killed him. Oh, Jerry, and then she trade. And then that's and that's him. And you see he says you have my age, you have my you've had my you pushed and can and she's regarding if you're too expect you've no I to until I really um and but um but but X and ikinci wasn't about the when um of and about about getting shot and AK says as well well more than one to get assure you but that is actress and is speak for a contract and and nation.
Yep, so basically you're going to lose your job. And you can see that's what she was scared like the most about from all this. And like I said, he sort of, and I think it's because of, he also emphasizes it's not just that you lied, it's the fact that people have died. and you're caught up in that. So that's why I can't just let you have like a suspension or sort of the lower sort of rank of punishment here.
Yeah, but yeah, but yeah, but and he says, what if what if I came again, to the or with the he would easier on me and give me a yellow notice, and he says, I know you think I'm harsh, but I know that this is us. This,
Yeah, like I said, it's weird because at that point he's been softly Ted, and now you see sort of what we know of Ted's sort of personality and how he's very. You have to follow the letter of the law, and sort of the it's almost like a sense of honor you get with him when he's sort of talking about doing these bits of his job. So now we pick up with Denton again very quickly.
and it's the and yeah, and it's like and it's the jury are and the jury are kind of operating and yeah, to basically
Yeah, and you sort of they ask them, don't they? Like, can you give us a what's it called? Can you give a decision? Sorry, my brain went. And they can't basically get a majority vote. There isn't enough of them either way, whether she's guilty or not, to have a complete vote. So they have to, so then the judge says, I can allow 10. If you've got 10, basically, from my understanding, people agreeing, that will be enough. So then they have to go back and discuss again, don't they? And that's sort of, I think that's a good little scene because it's highlighting just how messy this is. That it's not a clear sort of cut case because of Denton's lies and the fact that the lawyer puts doubt, obviously, and this sort of does show actually that what the lawyer said a couple of scenes ago obviously had an impact because they can't agree. So this is sort of a good little thing to show just how messy it's got now, Denton's trial, with all the lying and the sort of games that are being played.
Yeah. So yeah, so and so and so in reality, because she's and because she's yeah, and because she's served the and the would you sort of and the sentence and she gets out, and she gets out in license.
Well, that's near the end. Sort of said this is sort of the first bit of it.
Yeah.
They basically they can't decide. They have to go back because there is 2 counts that I think you can forget here. There's 2 counts which is basically, oh, somebody said it in a chat, perverting justice and then conspiracy to murder. There's 2 different cases being sort of heard and sort of debated on here. Because now we go back to sort of Dot, and the beginning of this is the autopsy. The second autopsy report comes back.
And the second autopsy report comes back, and again, this is kind of yeah, he starts to panic a bit, because he's a bit sort of, so he's a bit sort of edgy.
Yeah, because obviously before it was seen as Rod killed himself. Like that was it was set up, as we now learn, to look like that. But because of the second autopsy, there's signs of a struggle. There's signs that he got hit on the head. That was what killed him more than the actual asphyxiation, which is what you'd assume would, just to look at it when they found the body. And there's links to Harry also, which is important. There's fibre that links Harry to basically killing Rod.
So he wanted to try and organise an optic but and Harry gives us evidence that's pointing to Rod and Harry.
Yeah, and you sort of, so it's the SWAT team, or the I'm probably the American term there, but have to go after him. So it's the same characters, which means Kate is told she can't be on the op.
Yeah, because she's in. Yeah, she's in, and that seems odd. So, well, she's been relegated down. That's odd, but she kind of wants him wanting to try and get her back in and up, and he says, "No, that's too, and that's too dangerous."
Which you can maybe say, or maybe he is caring for her, but then you think this is Dot. Mm-hmm. So he's got a plan. He's up to something here that he doesn't want Kate near it.
He's getting all really more.
Yeah, which comes because obviously they start to arrest him, but Dot's obviously knew this was going to happen, so he's got there first. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, so so let's have a conversation, and so create and so create and so create here to and here to
yeah, and this is such a brilliant scene because he's at the beginning, he's the Dot we know, which is the sort of fake, which is, oh, I just got here, like, do my job and I'm early, what are you doing here? He's sort of a bit friendly, isn't he, and a bit blasé with Harry. And you can see Harry's a bit miffed, but he's sort of nothing's clicking yet.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dot starts to ask questions about what Harry knows.
And yeah, so Harry until he shows them the fun of one.
Well, yeah, because at first he starts to basically say, "Do you know who?" Sorry, because obviously we know that Dot's been the one on the phone with Harry, but Harry doesn't know. So he's asking, like, what do you know about the bloke who contacted you?
But hold on, I want to address with some comment for a sec. See if he see if what was going to Harry it kinda out I would kinda out as a bank as a bank as a bank offer, and if you know what the character Orton is more of a chameleon, and so he has to try and make himself out to be a hero. So,
that's sort of, like I said, there's sort of stages to this, which is the cleverness of Dot. He asks him questions. He asked about Tommy and Denton. Basically, do you know those names? And Harry's like, I don't have a clue who those people are. I don't know who's been contacting me. I've just been told. And then a moment which I love because it's Craig's face when Harry phones using the burner phone and that you get that same message.
It's the evil.
He has a
It's the,
proper evil smirk, doesn't he?
it's the evil. It's the evil smile that. It's the evil smile that. It's the evil smile that. It's me and I'm. I called. Oh, I don't know. I'm a man. No. It's. I'm in the.
Yeah, because he's
I'm
got
in
his
the way.
back to him, hasn't he? Like Dot
Mhm.
in the scene is not facing Harry, so as an audience we can just see his face, and it's a proper like now that's true Dot. That's Dot without any pretense, without any pretending, and you can see he's almost relishing it, isn't he?
Mhm.
That he's got Harry in this trap because that's what this is, and that Harry's none the wiser to who he's talking to. And you can see he's like almost really enjoying that moment, and you can just see it in the smirk, and it's a brilliant little moment.
And I mean, and so I mean, and so innocent and so innocent and 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 hears and he and hears on the silence is get hand off in his hand. So you're that into
Yeah, because you don't. I remember
um,
watching this the first time,
yeah.
and let's just say I knew he was going to do something. I
And
didn't suspect what he did, what he does next.
he smacked himself in the he, he properly smacked himself in the face with the handcuffs in the Jesus and yeah Jesus Christ Jesus Christ what the hell did in that um
Yeah, and like
um
to give credit to the actor who's Harriet's actor, he just got this utter look of like, what are you doing? Like this crazy man. He's starting to hit himself, and then so he's sort of like so when the obviously when the SWAT I can stop saying SWAT when the armed police start to come in then and Steve and everybody they basically see Dot with this massive like it's not a slash it's like a
like
it's like a really bad
yes
yeah it's a really bad graze almost isn't it and he's sort of like and he's even acting a bit like out of it isn't he like he's been in a fight and as soon as they come in and Harry's sort of on the floor I think Harry's then starting to click like oh I've been set up then Dot starts spouting off his rubbish, doesn't he? Of oh, I was here just checking. I shouldn't have come without backup. I got here first, and he attacked me. You can see how he's then just, I'm utterly like screwed.
yeah and yeah exactly and he sort of and and he sort of else he's in his version of the events and yellow like that he stinks and one unlike them was sticks to be experienced officers do not actually we think it's an idea until looking into Orton's version of events because he's
Yeah, but no,
never different back now.
if you think about it though, because there's another detail he adds, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
That Dot's already set up, which
Mm-hmm.
is the noose.
Oh
So he's
yeah, yeah.
he's fully like saying, "Oh, he was going to kill me," and
Mm-hmm.
this is what I mean. This is you're sort of seeing Dot almost at his full skills here because
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be see maybe with Hastings you can say maybe some things should be ringing, but
Yeah,
I can understand how when they arrive on the scene they are
mm-hmm.
going to take Dot's account because he's set it up
Yeah.
brilliantly.
Mm-hmm.
He's done all the groundwork and it's like Harry's been they think Harry's also you've got to remember they think Harry's responsible for shooting Danny. So he's already attacked, in their eyes, or murdered one policeman. So it wouldn't be a stretch for him to attack Dot.
Yeah, and that was your comment that you gave it. I think that case tends to be a bit more enlightening about the whole stuff. I think kids with years of experience. Um,
Well, but you've got
well,
to remember, he's not seen how Dot's been acting like Kate and Steve have. Because, like, in this episode, I think we didn't go over it. They both noticed how, Dot said he was going to get this autopsy sorted and he didn't.
yeah,
So they're starting to click a little bit. That Dot
yeah,
will say he's doing one thing and then it doesn't materialize. And it's but Hastings is he's not involved as much on that level, so he wouldn't see all that stuff.
yeah.
And we do know he's protective. We've seen him be protective of Kate and Steve.
Yeah, but he's kind of been sneaking in by Orton, and I think he's like, it's okay, son, you go and get yourself a checkup, and you're like, whole, and you're like, whole, you shit,
Yeah.
you're in it as well.
Which is, like I said, it's just more adding to Dot's skills here. That he's played this blinder, and got to admit, it is one. That he's willing to injure himself to basically do a convincing enough lie. Like that's the stage, but it also shows how desperate he is now. Like he's getting to that stage now that he's literally hitting himself or creating injuries
Yeah.
to sort of get the hero status, which is no.
I knew you would actually. I'm surprised they didn't say that on in the reviews Matthew, but like I knew it was coming eventually.
I wouldn't be surprised if they knew just obviously Dot and the sort of his name is very similar, isn't it? So now we do get to Denton and we learn what sentence she's getting.
And I mean, so as and so, so I've basically
Yeah.
kind of spoiled the as kids I'm an idiot, but like they should get some out on get out on ISIS, but she's already now this would and isn't the next would you have for this she's already certain outside of it, so she essentially gets a
Yeah, and because also Jill's there, isn't she? And Steve's also hanging
yeah.
around. He's not in the trial room at this point. And Jill does come out, and she sort of like, I can't believe it. She's got away with it. Like she's out, and you can see Steve's face also is like, oh my god, like this psycho woman who's come after me and accused me of all this stuff is now out.
And I mean, I mean, yes, and and so she and so she also so she also and she said of getting to the even so of getting to the it happened. I've been thinking of it ever since I was in our city. And our city needed in the wagon. And she says the very sort of psychotic girl. He um 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 of of
Yeah, it's a bit condescending, isn't it? And sort of almost like she's doing like heartfelt. But this is Denton, so you're just sort of, it's classic sort of her move to do. Like you would think, oh, she's gonna like scream at him or bawl at him or like call him everything underneath the sun. But no, it's I forgive you. Which, like I said, it's sort of playing even more with this thing of did he do it or did he not? You don't quite know at this point. Because there's evidence.
Oh God, oh God, and
Oh God.
oh God. See, see, like, see, like, see, like, this is the reason why I haven't invited you on to the stream behind the scenes because they're very an experience if you were to come on as a guest.
You're welcome, Matthew, but I understand you're comfortable being in the chat and we love you being in the chat because you come out with like golden comments like that.
Yes, and we got to and we got to Orton's and House of Heat and all the phones and stop and all the phones stop and all the phones stop and stop and stop and basically
Yeah, and it's another little. That's as I said. I love how creative some of the scenes are. Like they're not like you can see what they're trying to show there is his network is just. I don't know. I think it's. I just love the image and sort of the imagery of that moment of him sat there panicking and having like there's not just one or two burner phones, is there? It's like loads of them just all ringing, and it sort of adds to this panic he's got and this pressure and this feeling of everything he's built throughout the years, everything he's done is going to come to nothing almost.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, send the review guys, but I've made just was in the chat and if you try not to get me in trouble with answer that's
Oh, but Daniel, let's be fair. Let's be fair. We already are.
Ah, yeah. Well, because we're all evil. Because we're all evil patriarchs.
Because we happen to not like a certain doctor. We're evil and we're cancelled and we're the worst things on planet Earth.
And and apparently, if you ask him, say, on certain on other social media, you don't exist.
Oh yeah, I don't exist. I'm like this mythical creature that's just like magic. It's fun.
Okay, so we'll get a couple of Roseanne shows that I could give an 8 out of an 8 out of 10. Matthew gives it a 9 out of 10. And he gives it an 8 out of 10. But what I get to before I get to she's also written two additional sort of comments. So yeah. So he so he he can't put on the well. He put up he put up some actual not exact and you can see you can see you can see the killer transforming and that's and that's in exact visual very good character of um, of me and so I've over the what's what are you giving us episode?
Well, I think this episode has by far has got some of the most gripping scenes we've seen so far, and I like that it's from a range of actors and characters. Like we said, you see that scene with Dot when he's in the warehouse and that smirk and that sort of evil sort of "I've got you, I want you" sort of vibe, and the actor plays it brilliantly, Craig. Like I said, Steve, when
Oh
that scene when he's confronting Dale and he's snarling and shouting, and you can see the disgust because of what he did to the boys. That's another brilliant scene. Uh, I said this, and now they're all escaping from my head. Obviously, the conversation Steve had with Joe, and I think Jonas Armstrong was really good in that scene. So this is a really strong episode for acting. I think this is one of the strongest, I would argue, we've sort of had for guest stars and the main sort of cast, really showing their sort of mustard here and really showing what makes this show so fun and sort of gripping to watch. It's these actors, it's the performances you get. I think sort of more to do with the story, the whole topic of abuse to do with the boys' home. That is how you deal with that type of topic. That is how you write. You don't have a major song and dance about it. You do it with sensitivity. You keep it to almost the bare minimum, and you let the audience do a lot of the connecting. And you sort of just have the bits of dialogue you need to say enough. And I think also that you don't make it too. I think another thing, and I didn't say this. What I think so well about done well here is it's not too. It doesn't feel like they're copying something from real life or like a story or an event. You can see they're inspired by real life events, but it's their own sort of take on that topic, which I think is really well done. I think it's really impressive, like I said, the amount of stuff they're juggling here. Because I think the Denton stuff's quite compelling. Because, like you said, she's still lying, she's still sort of trying to use and manipulate. But once again, she has that moment of when she cracks and sort of gets shown up for what she is. Yeah, so I think I'll give this an 8 because I'm sort of I know what's going to happen as well near the end, and Daniel knows because he's one episode ahead, and I banned him from watching anymore. So I'm going to wait for 9 and 10 until we get a few more episodes in.
That was incredible. Evil world because I'm starting to get into it. Also, that was evil. Although I kinda I'm kinda gonna get my own, but I on the and I said series in a certain series is about to just open the and and uh, and I won't leave out just be paying attention. Also, other reactions and laughing.
Yeah, no, but here's the thing. You're going to be my therapist, basically, mate. Because when I'm watching these things, you're going to get so many messages of just, and you'll just see like through an hour, if it's because they're usually about an hour, just you're going to get like, oh, Charlotte started watching it, and by the end, you're going to be like, oh, Charlotte's finished watching it now.
Yeah.
So that's going to be your little responsibility. You're going to be my therapist, mate.
Yeah, and it shows you where them.
Yeah, so that'd be fun for you.
Oh God, here we go. Right now I'm gonna actually get you with a few. Well, I'm gonna say you know, and because of all the good acting on show, I mean, Rich Parkinson's used this episode to let's be fair. I mean, like if it wasn't um you could give a million different actors the same role, and they all would have eyed them as the F in that character. So it's a special kind of actor. They pulled and they pulled that off, and this story is well, as I say, sensitive and object, but at its hand, it's perfect. And there's a lot of within character development and story arc development. So henchman and henchman and henchman, I know, and are capable with on this episode to be we have a pretty
Do
good
you remember
so far.
when you were like after episode 1? Should I carry on watching this series?
Oh, here we go. Yes.
And I was like,
Yeah.
just wait, just watch more of it.
Mhm.
You see, folks, he's quiet. That means I'm right because he hasn't got a response.
Oh well, I will feedback on in a few weeks. I'm sure I don't need to say anything. So anyway, Charlotte, whose channel are you hearing on over the next coming weeks, basically?
Well, at the weekend, you'll find me at the TARDIS Zone where we do watch along, so classic and new Who. In a couple weeks' time, Spacebook Type 40 Live should be back, so you'll find me there on Thursdays. And I might, wink wink, be recording something with Dan and a few others tomorrow, so that should be released when it's ready. And Innomatic Joker, I had this week off because I was tired, like I said, but I've been doing a series with him about the personality of the Doctor, and Sudoku actually was on Monday, who's in the chat. Classic. We did Earthly Child last week. So is it the Cave of Skulls? Basically, the rest of that first story of William.
Yeah, I know the one. Yeah, I know the one. You mean the caveman story, which I can't remember the actual.
So basically, the 3 episodes that make up the caveman story. So not Unearthly Child, Sudoku. That's what we should be on Saturday. And then New Who we're in series 7. So we've got a Chris Chibnall episode, folks. So that'd be fun.
Jesus,
got dinosaurs on a spaceship.
I hate series 7 overall, but in this was on a spaceship. Oh my God. Oh.
Well, we'll have fun roasting it, folks. We'll have fun roasting it.
Yeah. So yeah, so for myself, having a short, I'm having a short weekend, and then we'll come back, and then we'll wrap up series, and we'll in the final the episodes, and and we'll kind of have a break for the reviews and look up a more streams, because as but I usually eat a few weeks off on them. So
So
yeah.
once we've got series 3 wrapped
Mhm,
up, it could be some excellent conversations. It could just be a fun topic because we have been sort of thinking of just fun one-off streams
mhm,
that we could do. So we'll see when we get there. I think a little bit, folks, what we want to do.
mhm. Yeah, so all that needs to be said. Oh, hold on a minute. Oh, oh after again. See, the chat always seems to be against
No, what the
the
chat does is that they side with
recording.
me. They side with me, don't you, chat? That's what happens.
And so all that means to be said, thanks for this support or from everybody in the chat. Make sure you're all subscribed, um, 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 make sure you're all subscribed to the channel. Yeah, the stream, get a like, and if you didn't like it, then obviously we hit the like button as well. And also as if you feel enter like a comment and after the show basically, but and until then, guys, here's the channel to the and have a good day, weekend, and I'll
Have a
talk
good
to
one, folks.
you again soon.